Hey everybody, how we doing? Let's take a look at module number 7. It is crazy to me that it is already week 7. You guys have been doing some great work, some outstanding stuff. Let's keep it up. We've only got 2 more weeks to go. I can't wait to see what you are doing here because this is the assignment that we really open it up for you. If we take a look at the overview here, joining the conversation through argument. I love that line. I think it's a great line because what we're doing is this is what you're going to be doing throughout your professional life, through most of your college career, where you are the engaging in the debate, right? Like you're joining in the conversation, but not just to agree, not just to say a thing about it, but to really engage in the discussion, to share your thoughts and your opinions, and to be able to explain the how and the why, right? This is something you're going to be doing a lot of. And so I think it's really important that we really have a handle on how to do this. When we talk about joining the conversation through argument, what we really mean is extending that conversation, right? And it's kind of like what we talk about with those discussion boards, right? When you say, I think because, right? Well, you say you like this, I think, and then add in more, right? And it's not so much that we're in an argument necessarily, like shouting at each other, but what we're doing is we're continuing the debate. We're adding to that conversation. We're allowing it to expand, and we're adding value to that debate. So again, this is super important. This is the crown jewel of this semester. And this is something I think that you're really going to be able to do a lot with. So if we look at this, we have our learning materials and our assignments, and then our kind of objectives that we have. We have some different tutorials, and then we have a repeat of the description of the project 3, the argument. So I hope that you guys have landed on a awesome topic based on those closed reading themes, or the closed theme readings. Um, I've talked to a couple people about their themes, or their research question, what they want to focus on, and really, as long as it fits in that broad idea of food and culture and how it fits into our society. You can talk about diet, you can talk about processed foods, you can talk about what food means, what we should be eating, any of these things that we've talked about, right? Anything in that broad kind of realm of topics you can use. Um, as we look at this, the final product is going to be a 1,200 word essay in either APA or MLA style, that you have at least 3 sources used in the document. Okay. And this is an argument, meaning you're trying to get your reader to agree to something or to act on something, right? And this, we talked about this before, but one of the big things that we have is obviously we have an introductory paragraph that gets the reader excited and motivated, and it gets their attention and sets the tone for the paper. And then we deliver a really strong argumentative thesis statement. Now, an argumentative thesis statement is one that it's an argument, right? Like it's a topic that you can argue, you can debate. It has to be something that has multiple viewpoints. Okay. For instance, breathing is good. Well, you can't argue breathing is bad. The human body needs oxygen. Like, we can't live without it. So you can't argue like don't breathe, or breathing is bad, or it's awful, or something like that, because there is no opposite, right? Like, you can't argue the other side. And so you have to have a topic that reasonable people, can have multiple viewpoints on. Okay. The second thing about the thesis statement should be that it is very clear. It's very emphatic. The position that you are going to stake out should be very evident here. For instance, there's a Mexican place here in town that I use as an example all the time. And Los Bravos has the best cheese dip. Okay. Now, we can argue about other restaurants here in town, like, well, what about Hacienda? What about El Patron? And what about El Riviera? So that's debatable, right? But then it is the best cheese dip, right? Like, it is emphatic. It's clear. There is no other debate, right? There is no room for I should that there's room for debate, but there's no like debate about where I stand on the issue. This is the best, right? It's not good cheese dip, or this is better than most places. Like, that kind of leaves it open to like, well, here, but there's other ones that are better or something, right? Like this really narrows it down and makes it very clear where I stand on this issue. Something else about the thesis statement is it should not have the word I or me or my or something like that. No first person. Obviously, we want to take first person out of this paper. We don't want any of that in here, especially in the thesis statement. It's your paper. We assume this is where you stand on the issue, right? So none of that none of that take, if you will. Okay. It talks about the arguments. This is where you stand, where you come up with justifications, rationale, and you present that to your audience as validation and proof and backing of your position. I think Los Bravos has the best cheese dip in town because it's thick and creamy, because it has a lot of really good flavor, and it's really inexpensive, right? So I give reasons. I have proof for my position. And we also look at arrangement. That's the organization, how you present your argument. Do you start with the smallest and work your way up to your biggest proofs? Do you reverse? You start off big and then you kind of add some more in there that kind of just continually back that up. Like, how do you present the argument? And what is the best way to do that to get your reader to really buy into the thing? There is obviously citation documentation involved in this. This paper is going to be either in APA or MLA style. Okay. And you have to have at least 3 sources cited in this text in your paper. Obviously, more is better. Okay. Obviously, more is better. But because you want to overwhelm your audience or your reader with proof, but you have to have at least 3 and they have to be cited. This week, we're going to do the half draft. That is 600 to 700 words, the first part of your paper. But like always, like I've told you all semester, the more you turn in, the better. The more you turn in, the more feedback you get. We're going to peer edit this one so you get more feedback on more of your paper, right? So it really is beneficial to you to turn in more than just a half, but the expectation is a half. Next week, our last week in class, you're going to have the final draft. You're going to have the reflective essay for the final exam. You got some other things to do, and that's a hard deadline. Like there's no like extending it past a certain point, right? Like it's and done. It's also a shorter week for us in that the final paper is due on Friday, not Sunday. And so it really is kind of important that anything you can do now to help yourself for next week would really be beneficial. Okay. But again, the expectation is half. The final version of this paper will be due on module number 8. Let's take a look at what else we have in this module. We have this here, the research essay as an attorney would look at it. And I find this really interesting as a concept here because this really does kind of repeat some of the things that I just said. First off, you've got to take a stand, right? Like think about an attorney. He's kind of innocent. No, he is innocent, right? Like there's no debate about where they stand on, right? Like he is guilty, right? Like there's no question about it. And so when you think about argument like an attorney would, you take a very clear stand on the issue. And then I think it's also like you think about like being an advocate, and being an advocate thinks about the other people, right? Like I'm thinking about my reader. I'm thinking about the consumers of my message, not just me. I'm thinking about the other people downstream that are going to get this message, and I'm asking them to act. I'm asking them to buy into these things. And so I really think that it really is important to put yourself in the shoes of your audience members or your readers when you are doing this. Okay. We also get some information on how to build your arguments. Now, this slideshow goes through a lot of different types of arguments and how to approach them. I really like this first piece that we have here, though, claim, evidence, and reasoning. So if you go back to my cheese dip example, right? Los Bravos has the best cheese dip. Okay. Prove it to me. That's evidence. Well, it's thick. It's creamy. Okay. It's got a really good flavor, and it's inexpensively priced. It doesn't cost a lot, right? You get a lot for a little. Reasoning then walks your audience through that. It explains that and gives them a reason to buy into it. So if you think about like, well, it's thick and creamy. Now, it's not so thick that you break your chips or stuff in, or you have to scoop it out and put it on your chip or something, right? You also like because I want the flavor, which it has a lot of, but I want that cheese on there, right? So I can dunk it and it sticks to the chip and it's creamy, right? Reasoning then walks your reader through why you have this certain position, right? It explains that to them and shows them how they can buy into it as well. Let's take a look at our discussion board for this week. By the way, that slideshow has a lot more about different types of arguments, but I really like that first slide. I wanted to work on that one for a second. The discussion for this week is thesis statements, and where you're going to produce thesis statements for different topics, and then reflect on how you think this might work, right? So you're going to write the possible working thesis for your argument essay, like the essay you're thinking about doing, okay? And what I want you to do is you can, and it says try a different claim here, try one of the claims are possible options for you to write a thesis in this style. But you need to be able to explain it and then reflect on it. Like, what is the advantages and disadvantages? What are the strengths and weaknesses? Where is this going to lead you? Why use the thesis this way instead of this way? So thinking about all the different types of thesis and thinking about that, this, the I say, they say kind of approaches. How does this thesis really help build into that? Now, that is your initial post, and you're going to do that early, middle of the week. Then you're going to respond to at least 2 other classmates, right? So you're going to go in and you're going to respond to at least 2 others. And the ways that you could respond might look like this. And what we really want you to do is think about that thesis and how that thesis promotes the position and promotes that topic, okay? Now, as we've talked about before, we definitely want to be civil. We want to debate the issue, not the person, right? Also, the more you reply, the better, right? 2 is the expectation. 3 gets you more points or more. And doing multiple days, that you have your initial post up midweek, that you've gone on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday, and you've looked at different people's and you've posted on different days. It's a conversation, right? It's a conversation, and we want to continue that conversation. So the more opportunities you have to be on there, the better. All right, and then let's get to where we submit our half draft. We've talked about that half draft already, so you should be pretty familiar with it. Again, the expectation is half, but if you do more, awesome, right? Like the more you can turn in, the better. I always like to point out the rubric here at the bottom. And again, thinking about like, okay, this is how it's going to be graded. Did I do these things, right? Are these things in there? Do I show this? Can I see this? Are these things present, and will they score me some points? I always like to point this out because this is where you can kind of see, okay, I have all of these ideas here. These things are in, these things are good. And then finally, the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to put a copy of the half draft into this writing response, this peer response for next week. So you're going to submit your half draft, then you're going to copy it, and you're going to paste it, and you're going to put it in here as well. This saves us from having to do it next week. It also speeds up the process, right? And because you have it open, there it is, right? Bam, bam, and we're done. And then next week, then your discussion board will be peer responding to each other's posts. Okay. So again, I want to just again say that you guys are doing some great work. I think that you guys are really making some great forward progress, and I want to see you continue that. We are getting very close to the end, so I don't want you to slack up. I want you to keep maintaining, that kind of dedication and determination. If there is anything you need, please make sure you're reaching out to me. Email is the best way. If you need a text message or call or whatever, we can do that. But make sure that you are reaching out if you need something, because we want you to be successful. And good luck, everybody.